The howl was the first thing that hit me as I neared the secluded stronghold. It didn't sound like the wolves you'd hear on some late-night documentary. This carried a deeper vibration, something that thudded through my ribs and stole the air from my lungs. Grief has its own frequency, one living things share, and I recognized it instantly. Snow snapped beneath my boots as I pushed through the final stretch toward the towering wooden gates. December's cold sliced through my coat, but I tightened my hold on the bundle pressed against me, letting my body heat form a pocket of warmth around the tiny forms curled together inside. Their soft whimpers nearly vanished into the wind that whipped across the Montana wilds. "You're almost home," I murmured, unsure if I was saying it to them or to steady myself. My grandmother Elira's voice drifted through my mind as my stiff fingers reached for the iron knocker. Sometimes the shattered recognize each other in ways the unbroken never notice. She'd placed her silver pendant, the crescent moon, with a drop of amber into my hand the day she passed and told me our bloodline had always stood between worlds. I didn't understand her until 3 days ago when I stumbled upon these abandoned pups near my cabin. The knocker felt impossibly heavy when I lifted it. Or maybe that was just the exhaustion settling into my bones. 3 nights without rest, feeding the pups with an eyedropper, watching their fragile bodies fight to stay alive. I'd driven 2 hours to the nearest vet, only for him to confirm what I already feared. These weren't normal wolf pups. The color drained from his face as he examined them. "Where did you get these?" he whispered, his voice dropping low. "In the woods behind my property. These belong to the Black Creek pack," he said, recoiling as if the pups burned him. "Take them back." Everyone around this isolated part of Montana knew the rumors. Some said Black Creek was a cult. Others muttered about government mutations. The truth was stranger, but people invent comfortable explanations when reality terrifies them. The sound of the knocker striking wood rolled through the valley, and the howling cut off instantly. The silence afterward felt sharper than the cold. I swallowed, suddenly aware of what I must look like, some pale, wind-beaten woman with hair escaping a sloppy bun, standing at their gate like a lost trespasser. Minutes dragged by. Snow thickened, dusting my coat and settling in my hair. I debated knocking again or leaving the pups at the entrance when footsteps scraped from the other side. The massive door eased open just enough for me to see a man's face. Sharp-cut features, winter-bright eyes that reflected the light in a way no human eyes should. His gaze skimmed over me, unimpressed, until it landed on the bundle in my arms. His nostrils flared. "What do you want?" His voice sounded raw, as if unused. "I found them," I said, pulling the blanket back to show the 3 tiny bodies curled together. "They were alone. I think they belong here." His expression shifted so fast it stole my breath. 1 second he looked like a man. The next, something otherworldly rippled beneath his skin. He tore the gate open. "Get inside!" he barked, gripping my arm with unexpected force and yanking me through the entryway. "Now!" The doors slammed shut behind us, and suddenly I was standing in a broad courtyard, surrounded by timber buildings shaped in a half circle. People, at least. They seemed like people at first glance, stepped out from doorways, every set of eyes locking on me, with a focus that made my nerves tighten. Kane, the man who'd let me in. Kane barked, her voice slicing through the rising murmurs like a blade. "Get Thorne. Tell him she has the pups." A tall woman with auburn hair moved like a shadow, silent, precise as she vanished into the largest building with a grace that felt more predator than human. The rest of them fanned out around me in a loose circle. Suspicion burned in their stares, some laced with hostility, others with barely restrained curiosity. "How'd you find them?" The man growled, his grip on my arm tightening. "Why'd you bring them here?" I didn't get a chance to answer. The crowd split like it had been cut in two, and he stepped out. Even if the others hadn't fallen into dead silence, I would have known instantly who he was. He carried power like a second skin, radiating off him in waves thick as wildfire heat. He was tall, broad across the shoulders, his dark hair brushing his jawline. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. Amber, exactly like the stone in Elira's pendant, burning with something wild and ancient and grieving. His gaze fell on the bundle in my arms, and his composure cracked. For a second, raw pain washed across his face, followed by a flash of disbelief. "Impossible," he breathed, covering the ground between us in long, purposeful strides. I should have been terrified. Every instinct screamed, "Run!" These people didn't feel human, not in the way that comforted. But as he closed in, something else entirely pulsed through me, something hot and strange, as if my body already knew what my mind hadn't caught up with. "They're alive," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Barely. But they need to be with their own." Now he stood right in front of me. The air was freezing, but his body radiated an unnatural heat. His eyes moved from the pups to my face, pinning me in place, reading something inside me I didn't know was visible. "What are you?" he asked softly, his voice barely above the wind. I opened my mouth, but one of the pups beat me to it, a sharp, high-pitched howl that shattered the stillness. Something broke in Thorn then. Without a word, he dropped to his knees in the snow, reaching for the bundle with trembling hands. Every alarm in me should have gone off. But instead of pulling away, I lowered the pups toward him, my fingers brushing his. The second our skin met, a jolt of electricity shot up my arm, and for a breathless second, I didn't see. I felt. Moonlight on snow, the rush of limbs tearing through forest. A grief so deep it hollowed out the bones. A loneliness that begged to be seen. He felt it too. I saw it in the way his pupils blew wide, the amber shrinking to a thin golden ring. "Omega." He whispered the word, falling from his lips like a prophecy. It swept through the gathering like a storm front. "Omega." They echoed, some in shock, others in reverence, all of them stunned. I stumbled back, heart pounding, gut screaming that I'd walked into something far beyond my understanding. Thorn, so that was his name, stood slowly. The pups cradled against his chest now. His face had gone unreadable. "You'll stay," he said. It wasn't a question. "I need to get home," I replied, taking another cautious step back. "I just wanted to return them safely." "You don't understand what you've done," he said, his tone softening. "What you are. It's not safe for you to leave now. I don't—" The storm's worsening, he cut in, glancing toward the gate. The wind screamed louder than the grieving howls I'd heard earlier. "And you're dead on your feet. You risked everything for our young." His voice shifted again, just slightly, something gentler threading through the authority. But his eyes never left me, sharp and searching, like he expected me to vanish if he blinked. One of the women stepped forward, Kane. Her gaze never wavered from my face. Attention sat behind her eyes, guarded, measuring. "I'll ready a room in the main house," she said. "I'll prepare a room in the main house," Kane said, but her eyes stayed locked on mine, sharp and unblinking. There was something in her stare, a twist of curiosity, coiled with doubt, and a flicker of something I couldn't name. "What's your name?" Thorn asked, his voice low but firm. I hesitated. I could still hear Elira's warnings from childhood about the weight of names, about how giving someone your name could give them power. But it was too late for hesitation. I was already inside, already surrounded. "Silra," I said at last. "Silra Winters." A ripple passed through the gathered crowd, a shift in the air I could feel in my bones. Thorn's jaw clenched slightly. "Winters," he repeated, like the name itself held meaning. "Of course you are." Then he turned to the others, raising his voice just enough to command attention. "Return to your posts. Silra Winters will stay with us tonight." The pack obeyed, though slowly, as if reluctant to take their eyes off me. Most drifted away in pairs, casting wary glances over their shoulders. Kane remained, her body tense, watching. "The east room," Thorn instructed, "and have Eris examine the pups immediately." Kane nodded and turned toward the main house, vanishing into its heavy timber frame. Alone now with Thorn, the full weight of my vulnerability settled on me. My car was a mile away, swallowed by snow on a road no longer passable. My phone was useless this deep in the mountains. Even if I could call for help, who would come? Who would dare set foot on Black Creek land? "Why did you call me that?" I asked quietly. "Omega. What does it mean?" Thorn studied me in silence, the pups squirming gently in his arms like they sensed the tension in the air. At last he spoke. "It means that nothing here will ever be the same again." He glanced down at the pups nestled against his chest. His face, though guarded, softened at the sight of them. For any of us? Just then a strong gust blew the main door wide open behind us, sending a swirl of snow whirling into the air. For a heartbeat, time slowed. It was just the two of us, frozen in that moment, the alpha holding the next generation of his pack, and me, a stranger standing at the edge of something irreversible. "Come inside, Silver Winters," Thorn said, turning toward the house. "There's much you need to understand before the night ends." I followed him across the courtyard, snow crunching underfoot. As we moved through the drifting white, the silver pendant beneath my coat warmed suddenly against my skin, almost like it was waking up after years of silence. I pressed my hand to it, Elira's last words echoing in my mind. "When the time comes, trust what you feel, not what you see." I hadn't known what she meant. Maybe I still didn't. But as the door closed behind us and the strange new world swallowed me whole, I knew one thing for certain. My life was never going back to the way it was. The main house caught me off guard. I'd expected something primitive, rough logs and pelts. Instead, it was elegant, in a rugged way. Vaulted ceilings of warm timber stretched above us. The great room was open and vast, glowing with firelight from a massive stone hearth. Shadows danced across polished floors and soft leather furnishings. "This way," Thorn said, leading me past curious gazes that followed us silently through the hall. The pups were still against his chest, breathing in slow rhythmic rise and fall. A strange ache tugged in me as I watched them. Relief, yes, but also a kind of emptiness, as though my arms already missed their weight. We entered what looked like a medical room. The air was clean and sharp, lined with cabinets and supplies. In the center stood a sturdy table. A woman with streaks of silver through dark hair looked up as we entered. Her eyes went wide at the sight of the bundle in Thorn's arms. "Impossible," she murmured the word, barely leaving her lips. It was the same word Thorn had spoken. "Check them," he said, his tone brisk but reverent, gently placing the pups on the table. "Elle's been caring for them for 3 days." The woman, Eris, I guessed, shot me a look that cut deep sharp with assessment. Then wordlessly, she turned to the pups. Her hands moved fast, confident, practiced. Eris moved with practiced precision, examining the tiny bodies with careful hands. I watched from the doorway, suddenly aware of my presence in this intimate, almost sacred moment. "How did you keep them alive?" Eris asked, her voice detached, clinical, yet carrying a note of reluctant respect. "Eyedropper feedings, every 2 hours, warm, compresses, body heat." I answered, my voice steady, despite the weight of the situation. Eris paused, her hands freezing for a moment. She exchanged a look with Thorn, one I couldn't interpret. The air in the room shifted, and I felt like an intruder, in a space where grief and urgency tangled in the air. "They're dehydrated but stable," Eris finally declared, glancing down at the smallest pup. "But the runt concerns me. Her heartbeat's irregular." She touched the pup gently, and the little creature's white-tipped ears twitched at her touch, its tiny body trembling slightly. Eris didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The sorrow that blanketed the room told me all I needed to know about the pup's mother. "We have the formula from last time." Thorn's voice was tight, his gaze not leaving the pups. "Last time we had Velka," Eris replied with a sharpness that made Thorn's jaw tighten. And it wasn't enough. The name hung between them like a heavy shroud, an unspoken history pulsing in the silence. I shifted uncomfortably, feeling like I was witnessing something deeply private, something I shouldn't be part of. Then what do you suggest? Thorn asked, frustration edging his tone. Eris's gaze flicked to me, appraising. Her, she said simply. Thorn's amber eyes locked onto mine, narrowing slightly. Explain. She's kept them alive this long. She might be what we need. I frowned, confusion rising. What are you talking about? I'm standing right here. You're speaking about me like I'm invisible. I couldn't keep the irritation from my voice. Both of them turned to me, their expressions identical in their intensity. In another context, it might have been amusing, but not now. What did you feel? Eris asked, cutting through the tension. When you found the pups, what did you feel? The question threw me. I had expected accusations, questions about trespassing, or the pup's origin, not this. I hesitated, searching for words to describe what had driven me that day. I paused, trying to find the right way to explain it. It was like something called me. I couldn't explain it. The sounds drew me in like they were reaching out, asking for me specifically. Eris nodded as if she already knew the answer. And when you touched them, she pressed. Calm, I whispered, remembering how everything inside me stilled when I gathered the tiny bodies to my chest, as though everything clicked into place. Thorn made a sound low in his throat, a growl that vibrated through his chest. Not quite human, he muttered. His hands clenched at his sides. I felt it too, the shift in him, the energy that pulsed just beneath the surface of his skin. This doesn't make sense. A human Omega. Eris's voice was softer now. It's never happened before, but many things are happening that never have before. She turned back to the pups. Whatever she is, these pups respond to her. Right now, that's what matters. Before either of them could say more, Kane appeared in the doorway, her posture tense. The room's ready, she said, her voice firm, but there was a hesitation in her step as she added, and the others? They're asking questions. They'll wait, Thorn said firmly, then turned to me. You need rest. We'll talk tomorrow. I need answers now, I said, my voice surprising even me with its strength. You've called me Omega twice. Talked about me like I'm some thing I don't even understand. I deserve to know what's going on. Thorn's gaze softened slightly. A flicker of respect, maybe even something else passing between us. You're right, he agreed after a pause. You deserve answers, but not here. He glanced down at the pups again, his tone shifting. Eris, prepare the formula. I'll return shortly. He gestured for me to follow him out of the room. As I turned to leave, something inside me tugged a strange, invisible pull toward the tiny pups on the examination table. I hesitated, looking back at them. They'll be here when you return, Eris said, her voice quieter now. Her voice softened, more gentle than before. They've imprinted on you. That bond doesn't break easily. Imprinted. The word sent a cold shiver down my spine. Whatever I had walked into, whatever these people were, I was already tied to them in ways I couldn't yet understand. I followed Thorn through the house, past dim-lit corridors, to a small study lined with bookshelves. He closed the door behind us and moved to pour 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. Drink, he said, offering me one. With what I asked, accepting the glass cautiously. With what you're about to learn, he replied, sinking into a leather chair and nodding to the seat across from him. What do you know about wolves, Elise Winters? His question hit me out of the blue, and it sounded strange after everything that had happened. The basics. They're pack animals, apex predators, and endangered in many places. I answered, a little unsure of where this was going. And what do you know about werewolves? He asked, his eyes locking onto mine, sharp and intent. I almost laughed, but the seriousness in his gaze stopped me. Folklore myths, horror stories. Movie monsters, I said, trying to lighten the mood. He nodded, taking a slow sip from his glass. And what if I told you the truth lies somewhere between all of those things? That we're not the wolves of the wild, nor the monsters of human imagination, but something that has evolved alongside humanity for thousands of years. My throat went dry. I'd say that's impossible, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. 3 days ago you found wolf pups that should have died without their mother. Yet something called you to them. Something gave you the knowledge to keep them alive. Is that also impossible? I stared at my untouched drink, the weight of his words sinking in. My mind flashed back to the strange feelings I had my entire life, the way animals always gravitated toward me, how I could almost feel their pain. The cryptic teachings from my grandmother about how our family had always been different. What are you saying? I asked, though a part of me already understood. The Black Creek pack is not human, Silra. Not entirely. We carry the bloodline of both wolf and human, a legacy passed down through generations. He paused, his gaze piercing. What humans would call werewolves, but that term doesn't even begin to capture what we are. His words hung in the air, matter of fact, like he was explaining the weather. I should have laughed. Should have set my drink down and walked out. But the pups in the next room, the grief that seemed to saturate this place, the strange electricity that shot through me when our hands had brushed everything, clicked into place. I couldn't deny it. And what am I whispered, barely able to speak the words. Thorn leaned forward, his amber eyes catching the light of the fire filled with intensity. In wolf packs, there's a hierarchy. Alphas lead betas in force. But omegas? He paused, searching for the right words. Omegas are rare, special. They are the heart of the pack. Empaths who feel the emotions of others, who heal, nurture, and bring balance. But I'm human, I protested, the weight of my confusion growing. You said it yourself. A human omega has never existed. Your bloodline isn't as human as you believe, he replied quietly. His gaze fell to the pendant at my throat. The Winters family has always lived on the boundaries. Not quite human, not quite like us. Sensitive, some call them. Those who can perceive the supernatural world without being fully part of it. I could almost see Elira's face in my mind, her strange lessons about the moon, the herbs she gathered, only at certain times, the way she always knew when the animals were in pain. This can't be real, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they weren't true. Some part of me had always known I was different. I've always known, I whispered. Yet here you are, Thorn said softly, his tone shifting as he looked down at the pups. Called to our pups in our darkest hour. His expression darkened, his voice turning raw personal. The hunters killed their mother. We thought them lost forever. I could hear the weight of his pain, the truth in his voice, and I knew then deep down that I was tangled in something bigger than myself. The pup's mother? I began carefully feeling the enormity of it all. Was she your sister? I asked quietly. Thorn's expression shifted. Grief flickered across his face like a wound reopened. Velka, he said, voice tight. She was carrying the future of our pack. First births in 5 years. His hand clenched around the glass. She went out hunting alone even after we warned her. Humans keep pushing deeper into our lands. When she didn't return, we followed her trail. Found the spot where she was shot. His jaw locked. But the pups were gone. I'm so sorry, I whispered. The words felt hollow in the face of what I now understood. They hadn't just lost someone they loved. They'd lost their legacy. We searched for days, he went on. Then the storm hit, wiped out all traces. We thought they were taken by hunters, or dead in the snow. His amber eyes met mine, and then you showed up at our gates, holding them in your arms. His words hit me like a weight. I'd stumbled blindly into a world older and deeper than I could have imagined. And now it didn't seem willing to let me go. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. Isn't your existence supposed to be secret? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, the first I'd seen. The moment you stepped through our gates, carrying our blood, secrecy stopped mattering. You're part of this now, Silra Winters. The only question is, what happens next? And what does happen next? I asked. That's up to you. He set his glass down and leaned forward. The pups have bonded with you. In our world, that bond is sacred. They need you, at least until they grow strong enough. And after that, I asked, watching his face carefully. Something shifted in his eyes. Regret maybe, or uncertainty. That will be your choice. But the way he said it made me wonder if that choice would truly be mine. There was something between us, something raw and ancient that pulled at me every time he looked my way. Primal and electric, it made my pulse race. Before I could speak, chaos erupted down the hall, raised voices, heavy footsteps pounding toward us. Thorn shot to his feet, moving with inhuman speed. The door slammed open before he reached it. Kane stood in the frame, breathless panic in her voice. Hunters, North Ridge, Rurik's been shot. Thorn's entire body tensed, every muscle coiled and ready. Alert the others. Full lockdown. Then his gaze snapped to me, sharp, accusing. How convenient. They show up the same night you do. I had nothing to do with this, I said quickly, rising to my feet. Maybe not intentionally? He growled. His features shifted, subtle but unmistakable. His cheekbones sharpened. His eyes darkened. His voice dropped low and wild. But coincidences like this don't happen in our world. Kane's eyes darted between us, torn between duty and suspicion. Eris says to bring her, she said, nodding at me. The runt's fading fast. She's tried everything. Thorn hesitated. The suspicion in his gaze warred with something else, concern maybe. Then he gave a short nod. Watch her. If she tries to leave or contact anyone, restrain her. I want to help, I said, thinking of the tiniest pup, the one fighting for its life. Please. Something in my voice must have struck something in him. His expression softened, just a fraction. Then prove it, he said. Prove your words with action, Omega. The title didn't sound like praise. It sounded like a test, a dare. Save what's left of my family. As Kane led me back toward the medical wing, the house was no longer just a home, it had become a stronghold preparing for war. Doors slammed, voices barked orders, boots pounded across wooden floors. The calm had shattered, and all because the Hollow Fang were back. I thought of the pups, fragile, unaware of the danger closing in, and of the tiniest one slipping away. I thought of the pull I'd felt in the woods, of the way they fit against me like they belonged. And I heard Elira's voice, again deep in my memory. Trust what you feel, not what you see. Right now, fear gripped me. But beneath that fear, something deeper burned. A fierce determination I hadn't expected. Whatever they were, these people. This pack they grieved, they protected, they fought. And none of that was inhuman. It was heartbreakingly human. And those fragile lives waiting for me in the medical room, they needed me. Whether I understood why didn't matter. I couldn't walk away. Not when they looked at me like I was the only tether holding them to this world. Not even if it meant I'd never be able to go back to the life I knew. The moment Kane pushed the door open, the medical room exploded into motion. Eris was hunched over the examination table, her focus locked on the tiniest pup. Her movements were quick, but there was an edge of desperation to them now. The little body trembled with shallow, irregular breaths. The other two pups whimpered softly, sensing their siblings' distress. She's crashing, Eris muttered, not even looking up. The formula isn't working. I stepped forward, ignoring Kane's quick glance of warning. The runt was barely clinging to life now, her breathing, thin and fluttery, her tiny chest barely rising. What can I do? I asked, choking on the sudden tightness in my throat. Eris finally lifted her head. Her eyes held both defeat and the last flicker of hope. Hold her, she said. If Thorn's right about what you are, your presence might be enough. I reached out without hesitation, gathering the tiny creature into my hands and pressing her close to my chest. She felt like air, like smoke, like she might dissolve if I exhaled too hard. Her heartbeat fluttered against my palm, uneven and fading. On instinct, I covered her with my hand, feeling the familiar warmth of Elira's pendant beneath my shirt. I pulled it out, warm silver, glinting in the low light, and gently pressed it against her frail body. "Fight," I whispered. "Please fight." That's when something shifted. A soft heat began to flow from the pendant through my fingers into her. The world seemed to blur, and in my mind's eye I saw strands of golden light stretching between me and each pup, threads of energy glowing like constellations. But the line to the runt, it flickered, dim, fading. I didn't think. I just acted. I imagined pouring my own energy down that thread, flooding it, lighting it up. I could feel it being drawn from inside me, pulled from something deeper than blood or thought. The pup in my arms shuddered, and then took a deep breath. Another, stronger, her heartbeat stabilizing. Eris breathed, her voice no longer clinical. It was filled with awe. What? What did you just do?" "I don't know," I murmured. I felt lightheaded. "I just didn't want her to die." Eris and Cain exchanged a look I couldn't decode. "Omega energy," Eris said quietly, "just like the old stories." The pup squirmed in my arms, her tiny mouth opening in a squeaky yawn that showed the pink of her tongue and gums. Relief surged through me, so fast it nearly dropped me. "You should sit," Cain said, her tone no longer guarded. She helped guide me to a chair. "Giving energy like that, it drains you, especially the first time." I collapsed into the seat, still cradling the pup. "Will she be okay now?" "Thanks to you," Eris nodded. "She's got a real chance. All of them do." But before we could take a full breath, chaos erupted in the front of the house. Shouting, footsteps pounding across the floors. Cain stiffened. Her hand flew to her hip. My breath caught when I realized she carried a blade. The door burst open. 2 men stormed in, dragging a third between them. Blood soaked the wounded man's shirt, the smell sharp and thick in the air. His skin had gone pale, jaw clenched in agony. Eris moved instantly, clearing the second table. "Lay him down now," she ordered. "What happened?" "Ambush," one of the men spat. "North Ridge. They were waiting for us." The injured man groaned in pain as they eased him down, his head rolled back, eyes fluttering. Then they snapped open, glassy but focused, and landed on me. Who is she?" he rasped, trying to sit up, even as blood seeped from his side. "Why is an outsider here during an attack?" Eris quickly explained, her voice steady. Despite the urgencies, she helped remove Rurik's blood-stained shirt. "She brought the pups home," she said. Thorn had ordered her to stay inside. Rurik's gaze fell on the bundle in my arms, and for a moment disbelief clouded his pain. "Impossible," he muttered. "You've lost a lot of blood," Eris said, her hands moving quickly over the wound in his shoulder. The bullet had gone clean through, but she stopped abruptly, her expression darkening. "There's something wrong. The wound should have started healing by now." A look of understanding passed between them. Silver Rurik rasped, his voice thick with pain. The room went silent. Even I understood enough from the old stories to know the significance of that word. Silver, the werewolf's bane. Some myths, it seemed, held more truth than we cared to admit. "We need to neutralize it," Eris said quickly, moving to a cabinet. "Cain, get Thorn. These hunters know exactly what they're after." Cain didn't hesitate. She rushed out of the room. Rurik's gaze found mine again. Harder now, despite the pain. "Convenient timing," he muttered through clenched teeth. "I had nothing to do with this," I said firmly. "Tired of the accusations. I've been living alone in my cabin for 2 years. I found the pups by chance." "There are no chances in our world," Rurik replied, wincing as Eris returned with a jar of dark paste. "Only fate and enemies." Before I could answer, the door burst open. Thorn stormed in, his face thunderous. Blood, not his own, splattered across his shirt, and his eyes burned with an unnatural glow. "Report," he demanded, moving to Rurik's side. "6 hunters so far," Rurik said, his breathing heavy. "Armed with silver ammunition and UV lights. They're not amateurs, Thorn. They knew our patrol routes." Thorn's jaw clenched, his eyes flashing with rage. "Casualties? Just Rurik so far," Eris replied, applying the paste to his wound. "But they have the high ground on the north ridge. If they push further into our territory, they won't stop." Thorn cut her off. "I've sent Kane and Vera to flank them from the east. Darius is leading the others to secure the southern boundary." His gaze flicked to me, calculating. "The question is, how did they know to come tonight?" I told you. "I had nothing to do with this," I said, frustration finally breaking through my calm. "I live alone. I barely speak to anyone. Why would I save your pups only to lead hunters to your door?" Something in my words seemed to reach him. His face softened just a fraction. "The pup?" he asked, nodding toward the bundle in my arms. "Stabilized," Eris replied. "Thanks to her." Thorn's gaze lingered on the tiny creature in my arms, a flicker of something vulnerable crossing his face before his mask of leadership slipped back into place. "The timing's still suspicious," he said, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the night. A gunshot, then another. Thorn tensed his body, going rigid, as if every muscle knew what was coming. A howl broke through the air, not a grieving sound this time, but a warning. "They're moving closer," he said already, heading for the door. "Kane, stay with them. No one enters this room without my direct order." "What about her?" Kane asked, nodding toward me. Thorn paused. His eyes met mine, and in that instant something unspoken passed between us, an understanding that went deeper than words. "Protect them," he said simply. Then he was gone, moving with a speed that wasn't human. Silence fell heavy and thick, broken only by Rurik's labored breathing and the soft whimpers of the pups. I shifted the runt in my arms, checking her breathing. It was steady. Gently, I placed her back with her siblings. They huddled together, immediately drawing comfort from each other's warmth. "Why would hunters come here?" I asked quietly. "What do they want?" Kane, standing by the door, glanced at me. "What hunters always want," she said. "Trophies. Proof. Some hunt us for sport, others because they think we're monsters," Eris added grimly, finishing up the bandages on Rurik's shoulder. "But some, they hunt us for our parts, believing things like blood claws and organs have magical properties." I felt sick. "That's barbaric. That's humanity." Rurik muttered, his color returning slightly as the paste Eris applied began to work. "No offense, but I'm half human apparently," I replied, remembering what Thorn had told me about my ancestry. This earned me a surprised look from all three of them. "He told you?" Kane asked, incredulous. "Some," I admitted. "Enough to know I'm somehow tied to all this, even if I don't fully understand how." Eris's expression grew thoughtful. "The Winters bloodline has always been close to our kind healers, mediators. But never before has one of them shown Omega traits." "What exactly does that mean?" I asked, trying to wrap my mind around it. "Being an Omega." Eris began checking Rurik's bandages. "In the simplest terms, you balance the pack. Alphas like Thorn project power outward. Omegas project calm inward. We sense emotions, ease suffering, facilitate healing. Like what you did for the pup." Kane added, her earlier hostility noticeably softened. A volley of gunshots cracked through the air, closer this time. Kane tensed her hand, instinctively brushing the knife at her side. "If they breach the compound, they won't," Rurik interrupted, pushing himself up despite Eris's protests. "Not while Thorn stands." The faith in his voice was absolute. Even though fear still gnawed at me, there was something oddly reassuring about the pack's unwavering loyalty to their leader. The certainty that Thorn would protect them, no matter the cost. A sudden silence fell outside, even more unnerving than the gunshots had been. We all froze, listening intently. Then came a sound that made my blood freeze, an agonized howl abruptly cut off. Thorn Kane whispered, her face draining of color. Without thinking, I stood up. "We have to help him." "Your concern is touching," Rurik said, though his voice had softened slightly. "But what exactly do you think you can do against armed hunters?" I didn't know. I only knew that the thought of them falling to these hunters filled me with an icy dread I couldn't explain. We had barely met. We were practically strangers. Yet another howl pierced the night, this one different, more desperate. A call for reinforcements. Kane made her decision. "Stay here," she ordered, moving swiftly toward the door. "Lock it behind me." "Wait," Eris called. "We need you here if they breach the house. If Thorn falls, the house won't matter." Kane's gaze hardened. "Rurik can fight if necessary," she replied grimly, disappearing through the door before anyone could protest further. I moved to secure it behind her, my hands shaking. Through the window, I saw figures moving at the edge of the forest. Human shapes carrying rifles closing in on the compound. "They're coming," I said quietly. Rurik struggled to his feet, Eris supporting him. "Get the pup somewhere safe," he ordered, his voice rough. "There's a hidden room in the cellar. Eris knows the way." "What about you?" I asked, a knot tightening in my chest. His smile was more wolf than man. "I'll buy you time." "You're injured," I protested. "The silver's neutralized enough," he replied, his tone grim. "I can still fight." He moved to a cabinet, retrieving a handgun with steady hands. "Oh, go now." Eris quickly gathered the pups into a small basket and gestured for me to follow her through a door at the back of the room. I hesitated, glancing back at Rurik, standing guard. His face was pale but determined. "Thank you," I said softly, "for protecting them, for protecting me." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. "Thank me by keeping them safe, Omega. They're our future." As I turned to follow Eris, the main door to the house slammed open. Shouts echoed through the hallways. The hunters had breached the compound, and somewhere out there in the darkness, Thorn was either injured or worse, fighting to protect his pack. They looked at me, suspicion and wonder in their eyes, these people whose touch had sent a jolt of electricity through my veins, whose family I now carried to safety. In that moment, something deep within me clicked, and I knew without a doubt I would do whatever it took to protect these pups, to protect the pack that was already starting to feel like my own. The stairs creaked under our weight as Eris led me downward, the basket of pups held tightly in my arms. Above us, the sounds of chaos intensified. Shouts, crashes, and then the sharp crack of a single gunshot that made both of us freeze for a split second on the steps. "Hurry!" Eris whispered, her face tight with fear. We reached the bottom of the stairs, stepping into a large storage room filled with shelves stacked with food and supplies. Eris moved quickly to the far wall, pressing against what seemed to be solid stone. To my surprise, the wall shifted, revealing a hidden passage. "Inside," she urged. I ducked into the small, dimly lit space, barely big enough for two. A single battery-powered lantern sat on a table, casting weak light across the stone walls. Eris followed me in, pulling the door shut behind us. The sounds from above were muffled now, but the tension was still palpable. We could hear the fighting growls that were too inhuman to be ignored. "The pack is shifting," Eris said, seeing my confusion. "When we're threatened, our wolf forms give us advantages." The pups in their basket shifted, restless. The smallest one, the runt I'd helped save, whimpered, her tiny body shaking. I reached in and gently stroked her little head, and to my surprise, she calmed under my touch. "How long has your pack been here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It was partly out of curiosity, partly to distract us both from the violence unfolding above. "Generations," Eris replied, glancing at each pup, checking them one by one. Thorn's great-grandfather established this territory in the 1920s after the hunters drove us out of our lands in Canada. "So it never ends," I said softly. the weight of history settling over me, the cycle of persecution, the endless fight for survival. Eris's eyes met mine, weary and understanding. Some humans fear what they don't understand. Others simply enjoy the power of taking life. She moved gently, adjusting the pups in the basket, ensuring they were comfortable as they nursed from the bottles she'd prepared. But there have always been humans who protected us, who saw us as kin instead of monsters. Like my ancestors, I asked quietly. She nodded. The Winters family has shared these mountains with us for almost as long as we've been here. Your grandmother was a trusted friend to our pack. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. My grandmother had known about all of this. She had been our healer, helping when supplies couldn't reach us during the harshest winters. A midwife. She had delivered Thorn himself during the worst blizzard in 50 years. I stared at Eris, struggling to process this new truth about the woman I had known as eccentric, mysterious. The one who taught me about herbs and the phases of the moon, who spoke to animals as if they understood her. All these years, her cryptic lessons had been preparing me for something I could never have imagined. A loud crash from above jolted us both. The pups began to whimper, sensing the danger outside. I gathered them closer to me, trying to project calm, even though my own fear was a storm inside. If they find us down here, I began, but Eris cut me off firmly. They won't. The pack would die before revealing this place. Her certainty should have been reassuring, but instead it filled me with dread. What was happening up there? And Thorn, what about him? The question slipped out before I could stop it. What about Thorn? Eris studied me curiously. You're concerned for him, despite his suspicion of you. I'm concerned for all of you, I replied honestly, though I couldn't deny the tight knot of worry twisting in my chest whenever I thought of Thorn injured or worse. This is wrong, I murmured. You've done nothing to deserve this. Eris' gaze softened, but the weight of what she said next hung heavy in the air. Such is the burden of being different in this world, Eris said softly, her voice filled with an understanding I couldn't yet grasp. Humans have always feared what walks between worlds. But I'm human, I protested, my voice weaker than I intended. Even as the words left my mouth, I could feel the truth slipping through my fingers. The way I'd healed the pup. The strange pull I felt toward this place, these people, and Thorn. None of it felt human in the way I'd always understood. Are you? Eris asked gently, her tone almost too soft. Or are you finally discovering what you've always been? Before I could respond, a sound from above froze us both. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate moving across the cellar floor. Hunters. They had made it past Rurik, past whatever defenses the pack had set up. Eris swiftly extinguished our lantern, plunging us into darkness. I huddled closer to the basket of pups, my heart pounding in my chest, praying they wouldn't hear it. The footsteps stopped right above us. There's nothing down here, a gruff voice muttered. Just storage. Check everything. Another voice responded. The Alpha said there were pups. They must be hiding them somewhere. The Alpha. My mind spun, piecing together their words. They could be lying. No, she was telling the truth. The second voice insisted. You saw how she reacted when Rurik threatened to dissect them. That's when the alpha male went berserk. A wave of nausea rolled through me. These weren't just hunters. They were torturers, researchers of the cruelest kind. Still can't believe she's human, the second voice mused. Working with these monsters. Stockholm Syndrome, probably. The first voice responded dismissively. Or maybe she's like that traitor doctor from the 80s, the one who helped them hide for years. Either way, she'll tell us everything once Rurik's done with her. A cold realization hit me like a hammer. They weren't talking about an alpha wolf. They were talking about Cain. They had captured her, used her to track the pups down, and Thorn had gone berserk trying to protect them. The footsteps moved away from our hiding place, heading deeper into the cellar. Eris's hand found mine in the dark, squeezing tightly. "We need to move," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "There's a tunnel that leads to the forest. If we can reach it." Before she could finish, the hidden door suddenly swung open, flooding our tiny room with light. My heart lurched in fear, expecting hunters with guns. But instead it was a bloodied Rurik, his face tight with determination. "We have to go," he said, his voice urgent. "Now! The south tunnel." "Thea, what?" Eris started, but Rurik cut her off. "They've got Kane and Marek," he said, voice grim. "Thorn's holding them off at the north entrance, but there are too many. They came prepared, silver nets, wolf's bane darts." His eyes shifted to the pups. "They know about the little ones. It's what they came for." I felt a wave of sickness rise in my throat. What do they want with them? Rurik's expression hardened further. "Pureblood wolf pups are rare. Their organs fetch high prices on certain black markets. Something about their youth essence and regenerative properties." He spat the words like poison, the casual cruelty of it stealing my breath. These were babies, helpless, innocent. The thought of them being slaughtered for some twisted notion of medicine or magic twisted my stomach. "I won't let that happen," I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Rurik looked at me, his expression appraising like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. "Then follow me. The south tunnel comes out 2 miles into the forest. If we can get there, we might have a chance." "What about the others?" Eris asked, gathering supplies into a small bag. "Thorn. Kane." Rurik's face tightened, a mix of physical pain and emotional strain. "Thorn ordered me to get you and the pups out, whatever the cost." The weight of his words hung in the air between us, unspoken, but heavy with meaning. "We can't just abandon them," I said firmly, standing up with the pups still clutched to my chest. "There has to be another way. This isn't a negotiation." Rurik growled, his patience running out. Thorn gave an order, and I'm not part of your pack to follow it blindly, I shot back. "These hunters want the pups. If we take them far enough away, maybe they'll follow us and leave the rest of you alone. Or they'll slaughter everyone here and come after us." "Next," Rurik countered. "Enough." Eris interjected, her voice low but commanding. "You two arguing waste time we don't have." She turned to me. "Silra, what do you suggest? Because Rurik's right. The pups are our priority." I took a deep breath. The idea forming was dangerous, but it was the only option. "You said I'm an Omega. That I can sense emotions. Project Calm. What if I could use that, not just on the pups, but on the hunters?" Rurik scoffed. "You've just discovered what you are. You can barely keep one runt pup alive. And now you want to mind control armed hunters, not control?" I corrected the plan, sharpening as I spoke. "Distract, confuse." My grandmother taught me techniques for years, meditation, energy work. I thought it was just her eccentricity. But what if it was preparation? I touched the pendant at my throat, feeling its weight, its power. I felt it when I healed the pup. Maybe I can use it. Eris and Rurik exchanged a look, skepticism warring with something like desperate hope. "It's too dangerous," Eris said finally. "You don't know your capabilities yet. You could drain yourself completely. And if I do nothing," I replied, my voice steely, "the people who protected me, protected these pups will die. I can't live with that." The sound of fighting grew louder above us, and my heart sank. Time was running out. "What exactly do you propose?" Rurik asked, his tone softer now, almost resigned. "Get me close enough to the fight. I'll do what I can to confuse the hunters, make them disoriented, emotional, anything to give your pack an advantage. Meanwhile, Eris takes the pups through the tunnel to safety." "Absolutely not," Rurik said immediately, his voice firm. "Thorn would tear me apart if I let you near those hunters." "And what will he do if his entire pack is slaughtered?" I challenged frustration creeping into my words. You said it yourself, they came prepared. Your pack needs every advantage. A loud crash from above interrupted our debate. Dust rained down from the ceiling. They're breaking through the floor, Eris whispered, her face pale with fear. Rurik made a split-second decision. Give the pups to Eris now. I carefully transferred the basket into her arms, my heart aching as the tiny creatures whimpered at the separation. The runt looked up at me, eyes barely open, and I felt our connection stretch. But hold on, I'll come find you, I whispered softly. Eris gripped my arm with surprising strength. The pendant, she said urgently. It amplifies what's already inside you. Focus through it. Let it guide you. Another crash echoed closer this time. Go, Rurik urged, pushing Eris toward the back of the hidden room where a small door I hadn't noticed before opened to a deeper underground passage. The south tunnel. Don't stop until you reach the old hunting cabin. As Eris disappeared with the pups, Rurik turned to me, his eyes glowing with a fierce inner light that didn't seem entirely human. Stay behind me, he ordered, his voice steady and commanding. If I tell you to run, you run. Understand, I nodded, clutching my pendant, tightly, trying to center myself as my grandmother had taught me. Focus inward, then project outward. Feel the connections between all living things. Trust what you feel, not what you see. Rurik led me through the cellar towards a different staircase than the one we'd descended. I could hear the fighting more clearly now. Human voices mixed with the guttural growls and snarls of wolves. The sound sent a chill through me, my pulse racing. Ready, Rurik? Asked, his voice calm. I wasn't, not even close, but I thought of Thorn fighting to protect his pack. And I knew what I had to do. I thought of Cain, of her being captured and used to betray her own pack. I thought of the tiny pups who deserved a chance at life. Ready. I lied and followed Rurik into the chaos. The scene that greeted us was straight out of a nightmare. The grand room I had admired earlier now lay in ruins. Furniture with shattered windows broken. Blood, both human and wolf, stained the polished wooden floors. Men in tactical gear, armed with silver-tipped weapons, stood facing creatures caught between human and wolf. The pack members, some fully transformed, others in various stages, fought to defend their home. And there in the center of it all stood Thorn. He was a terrifying sight, more wolf than man. Now his massive form holding back 3 hunters at once. Blood matted his dark fur, but his eyes, the same amber I'd recognized, burned with defiance. He saw me before I saw him. Our gazes locked across the room, and in that instant something powerful and electric surged between us. Rage, fear, but beneath it all there was a protectiveness that stole my breath. Then a hunter raised his gun toward Thorn's back. Without thinking, I screamed a warning that tore from my throat. My hand shot to my pendant. Everything happened in a flash. The pendant burned hot against my skin, and raw, untamed energy surged through me. Every human in the room, the hunters, suddenly staggered, clutching their heads as though struck by an overwhelming wave of emotion. In that split second of confusion, the tide shifted. The pack moved with lethal precision, disarming the hunters, who now couldn't focus their minds, caught in the storm I'd unknowingly unleashed. I collapsed to my knees, drained by whatever I had done, but somehow I remained conscious. Through my blurred vision, I saw Thorn shift back into human form, making his way toward me with a mixture of wonder and concern in his eyes. Silra, he said softly as he reached me, what have you done? I tried to answer, but the world faded to black. My strength was gone. The last thing I felt were strong arms catching me as I fell forward, and a voice in my ear whispering, "Hold on, Omega. Just hold on." Then everything went dark. I dreamed of running through moonlit forests faster than I had ever moved before, of howling alongside others, their voices joining mine in joyous harmony, not sorrow. It was a feeling I'd never known in the human world of truly belonging. When I finally woke, sunlight streamed through unfamiliar windows. I lay in a comfortable bed, in a room I didn't recognize. Rustic wooden walls, simple furnishings, a large fireplace where embers still glowed. My body felt heavy as if I'd been asleep for days instead of hours. As my awareness returned, memories flooded back the hunters, the fight, the strange power I'd unleashed through my grandmother's pendant. I reached for it instinctively, finding it still warm around my neck, resting against my skin. 3 days, a voice came from the corner of the room. I turned my head to see Thorn sitting in a chair by the fireplace watching me. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, a bandage visible beneath his partially unbuttoned shirt. But he was alive. A wave of relief washed over me, stronger than I expected. 3 days, I echoed, my voice hoarse from disuse. That's how long you've been unconscious, Thorn replied, rising from the chair. He approached the bed and offered me a glass of water from the bedside table. I accepted the water gratefully, taking small sips as I tried to gather my thoughts. The pups are safe, he assured me. Eris got them to the hunting cabin. They're thriving, even the runt. My heart lightened at the news, and the others I asked, though the worry still lingered. Kane Rurik injured but alive. Thanks to you. Thorn sat at the edge of the bed, his intense amber gaze studying me carefully. What you did. His voice softened. It shouldn't have been possible. Not for a human Omega who's only just discovered her abilities. I struggled to sit up, and Thorn moved to help me, his hand warm and steady on my shoulder. I don't know how I did it, I admitted. It was instinct. The pendant grew hot, and I just pushed everything I was feeling outward. You overwhelmed them with emotion? Thorn explained, his voice thick with awe. Fear, confusion. Doubt, all the things you were feeling yourself. An Omega's mirror effect, but weaponized. There was a strange admiration in his voice. Even born Omegas rarely develop such abilities before years of training. The hunters. I asked, my voice barely a whisper, not sure I was ready for the answer. Gone, he said simply. Some fled when their minds cleared. Others, he hesitated. We didn't kill them, if that's what you're asking. We're not the monsters they think we are. But they won't be back. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my chest. Despite everything the hunters had done, the thought of being responsible for their deaths, even indirectly, was more than I could bear. How do you feel? Thorn asked, his gaze never leaving mine. Strange, I admitted. Like something inside me has shifted, awakened. I looked down at my hands, half expecting them to look different somehow. I don't feel entirely human anymore. Perhaps you never were, he suggested gently. Not entirely. A knock at the door interrupted us. Kane stepped in, carrying a tray of food. Her face was bruised, and she moved stiffly, but her eyes were clear, alert. When she saw me sitting up, a genuine smile lit up her face. Our Omega returns to us, she said, setting the tray on the bedside table. The title no longer carried suspicion, only respect and something close to affection. How are you? I asked, noticing the bandage on her arm. Healing, she replied simply. As we all are. Her gaze shifted to Thorn. The council is waiting in the great room. They've come from the Western Territories to meet her. Thorn nodded, a flash of annoyance crossing his features. Tell them she needs more time to recover. I told them that, Kane replied. They insisted. The disdain in her voice was clear. Council, I asked, my curiosity piqued. Representatives from other packs, Thorn explained. News travels quickly in our world. A human Omega who saved pure-blood pups and defeated hunters with emotional projection. It's unprecedented. A wave of anxiety washed over me. What do they want? To verify what happened? Thorn said, his voice flat. To see you for themselves. His jaw tightened slightly. To determine what this means for our kind's future. The weight of his words settled over me like a heavy blanket. I wasn't just some oddity or temporary ally anymore. My existence had implications for their entire society. You don't have to see them today, Thorn added, his voice softening. Your recovery comes first." I considered this for a moment before shaking my head. "No, I want to meet them." I pushed back the blankets, my resolve firm. "But I need to see the pups first." A look passed between Kane and Thorn, something like approval. "I'll bring them to you," Kane said, turning toward the door. "Wait," Thorn called after her. "Ask Eris to bring them and tell the council they can wait another hour." After Kane left, silence settled between Thorn and me. He remained seated on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could feel the unnatural heat radiating from his body. There were unspoken words hanging in the air, questions about what happened next, about my place in this world I'd stumbled into. "You saved us," he said finally, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Not just the pups," he added, his gaze steady on mine, "but the entire pack. Why, you barely knew us. I treated you with suspicion. I kept you prisoner. You could have died." I considered his question, trying to find the words that would explain what I couldn't yet fully understand. "Because it was right," I said at last. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't the full truth. I hesitated, searching for the right words to express the connection I'd felt the moment I walked through the gates. Because something in me recognized something in all of you, like finding a part of myself I never knew was missing. Thorn's eyes darkened slightly, the amber flecked with gold. Now I echoed, my voice trembling. "I don't know." I looked around the unfamiliar room, memories of my solitary cabin, miles away, flooding my mind. The life I had built there suddenly felt like an illusion, hollow and incomplete. "I can't go back to who I was before," I admitted quietly. "I don't think I want to." Thorn's hand moved to cover mine, his touch sending that familiar current of electricity up my arm, igniting something deep inside. "Then don't." His words, simple yet heavy, held an offer I couldn't ignore. Stay, become part of us. Explore what you are and what we could be. Before I could respond, the door opened again, and Eris entered, carrying the basket of pups. Their tiny bodies squirmed with newfound energy, their eyes now fully open, bright and alert. When they caught my scent, excited whimpers filled the room, tugging at something primal inside me. "They've been restless without you," Eris said, bringing the pups to the bed. "They know their Omega." I reached for the basket, and immediately the pups scrambled toward me, their little paws slipping on the blankets. The runt, the one I'd saved, was first, her cold nose pressing against my hand as if recognizing me. "She needs a name," Thorn said softly, watching the interaction with an unreadable expression. "They all do." "Isn't that your responsibility?" I asked, glancing at him. "You're their alpha." He shook his head, his amber eyes steady. "They bonded with you first. In our traditions, that gives you the right." I looked down at the 3 pups exploring the bed. The 2 larger ones, males, I realized were already showing the confidence of their bloodline, playfully pouncing on each other. But the runt, the female with white-tipped ears, stayed close to me, her tiny body pressed against my leg. "Luna," I said softly, touching her head, "for the smallest." I looked at the 2 males, watching them play. Vex for the silver one, and Koru for the one that can't sit still. Thorn smiled, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his usually stern features. "Good names. Strong names." Eris, who had been standing by the door, stepped forward. "The council is growing impatient. Shall I tell them you'll be coming soon?" Thorn nodded reluctantly. "Give us a few more minutes." After she left, I gathered the pups close, drawing strength from their innocent affection. "What does the council want from me?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Information, primarily." Thorn replied, his tone serious. "Your existence changes things for our kind. A human Omega, or mostly human, opens possibilities we hadn't even considered." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Some may suggest you return with them to their territories, to study your abilities, to see if others like you exist." A chill swept through me, at the thought of being torn from the pack I had come to think of as my own, from Thorn, from the pups. "And what do you want?" I asked, meeting his gaze directly. Thorn's eyes darkened, and for the first time all pretense dropped away. "I want you to stay with us. Here." The admission came with weight, and I saw something in him, a vulnerability beneath the strength of his alpha presence. "But the choice must be yours. That's our most sacred law. An Omega chooses their path freely." The pups curled against me, already trusting me completely. Beyond the window I saw the courtyard, the place where I'd first entered this world, now restored to order after the attack. Pack members moved with the same fluid grace I had noticed before, carrying out their daily tasks with the ease of those who had found their place. This place that had seemed so foreign just days ago now felt like it was calling me, offering something I had never felt before: belonging. "And if I choose to stay?" I whispered, almost afraid of the answer. What would that mean? Thorn's expression intensified, something primal flickering beneath the surface. It would mean becoming truly part of the pack. He said, his voice low, "Learning our ways, developing your abilities." He hesitated, then added, "And eventually, when you're ready, taking your place as Omega to my Alpha." The weight of those words hung between us, not just a role, not just a title. It was a promise, a bond, something deeper. "Is that what you want?" I asked softly, needing to hear the truth from him, not through instinct or a look, but words. Thorn's fingers slid into mine, lacing together with a tenderness that didn't match the fierce strength of his presence. "From the moment you crossed those gates," he said, voice low, snow-dusted, "holding our future in your arms and standing tall despite your fear, I knew. Yes, it's what I want." His words echoed through me, cutting through everything. The doubt, the fear, the past. The connection between us hadn't been built, it had ignited. Swift, raw, real. Alpha and Omega. Two parts of a whole we hadn't known we were missing. "I don't know your world," I admitted, voice trembling with honesty. "There's so much I don't understand." "We'll learn together," he promised, firm but gentle. "You're unlike anyone we've ever known." Just then, Neera the runt climbed clumsily up my arm, her tiny paws gripping my sleeve, making her way to my shoulder. She pressed her soft muzzle to the crook of my neck, a warm, trusting weight that felt like both a vow and a gift. I remembered the seance of my old life, the lonely rhythm of the forest, the cold walls of my cabin, a waiting I hadn't understood until now. And here in this house, marked by claw and blood and fierce loyalty, I felt it. The pull of purpose, of tribe, of belonging. "I want to stay," I whispered, no doubt in my voice now. "I want to learn what I am, what I could become. I want to protect this pack." Thorn's eyes locked onto mine, glowing gold beneath amber. "Our pack," I corrected gently. The tension in his shoulders melted. A new warmth lit his face. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent fire spiraling through my chest. "Then let's face the council," he said, rising with me. "Let them see what a human Omega truly is." I stood, slowly easing the pups aside. Neera clung stubbornly to my shoulder, refusing to be left behind. Her tiny head rested against my neck like a sentinel. "She's claimed you," Thorn said, amusement curling in his voice. "Or maybe I claimed her," I murmured, running a finger down her back. "When I found them in the snow, something passed between us. Something real." He nodded, understanding. That's how packs begin. As we stepped into the hallway, shoulder to shoulder, the pups snuggled close in their basket. We passed pack members along the way. Where once there had been suspicion, now there was something else, nods of quiet respect, glances that carried weight. Some pressed their fingers to their foreheads, a gesture I didn't understand but felt deep in my bones. Outside the council chamber, Thorn paused, turning to face me. Whatever happens in there, he said, voice quieter now, know this, you already belong, with or without their blessing. I smiled at him, touched Illyra's pendant resting warm against my collarbone, and looked at the pup on my shoulder. Then let's show them, I said, what happens when an alpha finds his omega. The great doors opened, light pouring out onto us. And together we stepped through, not as strangers, not as legend, but as something far more powerful, a future.